Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 826. Today we're going to talk about Shin Megami Tensei 4 for the 3DS. In this case it's running on the AYN Thor. So something a little bit different for the channel. The reason that I am reviewing this game, which is like 10 years old or more, is because, you know, over the last few months and working back a year or so, I've done some videos on JRPGs and podcasts and vlogs and reviews, and also a couple of videos on the AYN Thor, and I'll have links to all that stuff down below. But when I initially started talking about the RPGs a little bit ago, a lot of people said you got to get a 3DS because there's a bunch of games that are like stuck on that system because of the whole dual screen idea there. And specifically this game, Shin Megami Tensei 4, that was mentioned, you know, at least half a dozen times. And I had played in the original sort of vlog video that I did Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster, Persona 3 Reloaded, and something else like in that vein, I think, of the games from Atlas. And if you go by the title of this video, I think it's very appropriate that this is even being talked about on a board game channel, and I'll explain some of the deck building and the card crafting sort of mechanics that are in here in a little bit. I'll throw up some footage here from the channel Analog Vernacular, and you can see he's playing it on a PC, and so it has the secondary window kind of off in the lower right hand corner, and he's using an HD texture pack, and I use that same HD texture pack on the AYN Thor as well. And so I'll show you kind of both sort of footage from him, and I'll have links to his channel and in the footage there, and then as well as some of the footage and stuff I'll show you kind of down at the table here of it running on the Thor, and some of the little things you can do to to play with this. I'm using the Azahar emulator, and I did have a chance to actually play this on a real 3DS. And so over the course of the year, as people were kind of suggesting, hey, check out a 3DS, I got in this whole big, handheld journey, and then landed on this thing. And so I will kind of talk through a little bit of that, and some of the sort of benefits and sort of upgrades that kind of come with this when you emulate it on this device. And then we'll just kind of talk generally about it. So let's go down to the table. I'll talk some technical stuff first, and then I'll talk some game mechanics and sort of how it relates to board gaming or maybe card gaming in a way. So like I said, I'll start with a couple of technical things specific to running it on the Thor or just really any Android device, but this is really a good one because it has the dual screen. So here you can see with no custom textures enabled, so you can see it's a little bit pixely on the main menu here. And if you take a look at one of the kind of the starting dungeon areas here, you get kind of a sense there. Now I'll switch to the HD texture pack, and now you can see how much crisper that main menu is. That's just an easy way to kind of indicate that. So we'll jump back into the game. So you can see it's a little bit sharper there, like on the bricks and things like that. And then we'll just kind of run down here a little bit. So you can see these are pretty sharp in terms of the monster models there, the daemon model. So that's a very nice upgrade with being able to play, on one of these handheld devices like that, to use those custom HD textures and kind of bring it into kind of the modern day. The one thing you miss out on is you can't do the whole 3D thing from the 3DS. And I have done that with my old 3DS, and it looks pretty cool, but it's kind of a novelty that lasts for about 5 minutes, and I don't really miss it at all. Now there's a couple other cool technical things that you can do when you're running it in an emulation like this with Azahar or Citron. And the first thing you can do here is you can actually, if you can see, I can use one of these hotkeys here, open up this in emulator menu here, and I can go to save states like so. So I can just go back to a little quick save I had there, and so that'll jump me right back to it. Now in this game, you can basically quick save anyway. So you only get 2 save slots though. You can see here with the quick save I have. So this is my sort of finished game, and then this is early on in my first playthrough there. So I could jump back to this if I want to do that. So here I've loaded up that game, but it's nice to have the extra slots here from these quick save slots. It gives you up to 10 there. So that's one cool thing there. Now the other thing is you can speed it up. So you can see I'm moving around kind of the world map here, but if I tap this, then I've got a little bit faster type of thing here, so I can move quicker. So if I want to get into an area where I'm kind of like grinding through real quick, then, I'll turn it off now. So you can see how much slower I'm moving there. Whereas if I turn it on, now you can see how quickly all this comes up. And so I can just let's do the auto attack here. So it goes really, really fast. So if I'm just like this, for example, I'm over leveled for this particular area, you can use that sort of fast forward there to help you, make the game a lot more enjoyable. So that's a nice little feature that you can add. So having that quick save and the fast forward, that just makes it already better than playing it on the 3DS really just by itself. So here I'm in a combat, and so this is the main thing I really want to just talk about with this game in terms of how it relates to, board gaming or tabletop gaming. So you can see here, you play a main character here. This is named Flynn, although you can give it a different name if you want. And you'll be fighting as well as befriending these various different demons, and it's set in this kind of post-apocalyptic world, which I'll get to more into later. But it's kind of a Monster Hunter, Pokemon, sort of, monster collection type of thing. So you can see my character here, they've got some special abilities here. They got attack, shoot. This is like what's called a force, or like a wind or air attack, electric attack. Here's a heal. Here's a cold attack or ice attack, a water or fire attack. And this one is kind of a defensive thing. And this is a special ranged attack. And this is what's called an almighty attack. So here, I can just, if I want to, attack that particular demon there. And I also have this demon that I've now summoned. Now this is the very beginning of the game, although the reason this character had all of those attacks because it's kind of a new game plus. So you can start with, all your stuff and then go through it, because there is multiple endings if you want to do that. So here you can see I've got this centaur type of character there. All they have is a basic attack here and a ice attack. And so I can attack this guy with the ice attack. And you'll notice here there's a little exclamation point, which means he is weak to that. So if I do that, you can see it added or reused the little turn indicator here, and this is called a press turn icon. So if you hit a monster or demon with a weakness, so if I go here and I try to hit him with an ice attack again, you can see that will give me kind of a bonus turn or bonus action point, if you will. Or if I hit him with a critical, I can do that. If you miss them or they block them, or maybe they're immune to like a certain attack, which I don't think these guys are, it's too early in the game, then it will actually, you'll lose action points, you'll lose these press turn icons. And the enemies themselves can also do the same thing. So your characters will have different weaknesses and such like that, or if they critical on you, then they will get extra turns. So it's kind of this interesting balance of sort of action point economy, as well as having a list of these demons. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to this guy here, and this is how you recruit new ones. So I'm going to ask him to become my ally. And so usually they give you some kind of like sort of riddle or something like that, and then you answer it, and then you start to go through and figure out which certain types of demons will, allow you to get to the next stage of the scouting action, which is what we're doing here. And then you usually have to bribe them with something. So there's a little bit of a cost, whether you use a little bit of your hit points, or in this case, my magic points. And this is the beginning of the game, so it's very easy to do. Sometimes you have to give him items or money and that kind of thing. So I'm going to recruit him right into here. Now he goes into my sort of deck, if you will. And you can have up to 3 monsters there, or 3 demons. But then you can also have a whole just huge sideboard, effectively, of those demons. So if I open up my main menu here, you can see here's all of the different demons I've collected, which there's not many. So if I go into my stock, I can summon them. So let's load up a different game. So here, let's fire up the menu here. And now we've got, this is a little bit, maybe 2/3 of the way through the first playthrough. You can see here I've got a stock of these different demons. And then these 3 here are in my party already, and so I have these others that I can choose from, and you can sit here and scroll through their special abilities. He doesn't have a lot. This one's got a few different ones, and so on. And one thing I can do with them is if I go down here and very quickly through the game, you can go through and sort of combine the demons. So let's take a look here. So if I wanted to sort of create this demon, I don't have to go find her in the world and bring it to my party. I can also basically fuse these 2 demons here. So I can fuse this guy and this guy She's dead, but you can still fuse them if they're dead, and you can resurrect them. So, and I could make her. So if I do this, I can push that, and then now here is the skills that she's going to start with. Now I can also sort of lay these out differently, so I can pick and choose which skills go into, you know, her make. And so there's other things to keep in mind. You can see what her weaknesses are and what her stats will be, and you kind of compare that to these other demons here. So if we take a look at these, you can see the different stats and things and the weaknesses going through. And so in that way you can sort of card craft, if you will. You can craft these different demons how you want them to be. And you'll find that through different sort of stages of the game. Let's just back out of here. Like so, like there's certain areas of the game. So, and there's certain areas with certain types of monsters, certain types of bosses and things like that, that you want to have different loadouts for. So let's take a look at this guy. This guy's called Sentanta. And if we go down here and look at his abilities, you can see he's got a nice ranged attack here, some resist built in, different range attack. He's got the ability to use items, which is helpful because different items can have different elements, which will help you with different weaknesses. And he's got this really handy ability here, this Tetrakarn, which is kind of like a super buff that lasts one turn and costs a ton of mana. But let's say you're fighting a boss here. So now you have a choice here between this guy. He doesn't have a lot of in terms of the different elements. There's no air attacks, fire attacks, and so on. But you might swap him in just for that special buff, because you know, like the boss that you're going to fight, like let's say every 5th turn or when he goes to stage 2 or something, he does a nasty buff or nasty attack. So it's good to have something like this sort of in your deck or in your party of demons. But then you want to be able to do special damage to him. Let's just go to the main character, because he'll have a lot of stuff. And so you go, okay, well, I know that boss or whoever is weak to fire, for example. So, you know, you might take the route, especially early in the game, you're like, I'll just load up a bunch of guys and fuse a bunch of demons, you know, that will have fire attacks, because then I will get my bonuses, you know, my extra turns and all that stuff, and do more damage and things like that. But you're going to need, maybe in this theoretical case, you're going to need that extra debuff there, or that buff. And you might need somebody to heal, because you know that they just do a ton of damage, period, and it's magic damage, and maybe that buff doesn't protect you from magic. So there's a bunch of different like ways to kind of play around with building your party and stuff. And you can use these skills sort of out of combat. So you have 4 people, including your main character, in combat, and then you can have a bunch of extras. And so maybe I've got skills and healing and different things like that that I want to use, and I can access that outside of combat. And the other thing you can have in this game, just sticking with mechanics, is this app. So you can get, as you level up your main character, the idea is that you summon demons like with this phone device that's on your wrist, which is kind of fits the mobile handheld sort of theme of the game, because remember, this was made for a 3DS. So it's almost like you have this device, and so you're sort of upgrading it here. And so you can upgrade all kinds of things, allow you to hold more demons in your party, you know, that in your reserve basically. You can add HP recovery, boost the demons, you know, give you more XP when you fuse the demons, all kinds of different things in here. So you can sort of upgrade these as you go as well. So you can customize that. And there's also, like I said, items and things like that. You have just basic equipment that you can equip onto your main character there, you know, swords and guns and things like that. So that was kind of a technical overview in terms of working with the Thor, and then also a real sort of cut and dry mechanical overview. And I wanted to start to get into why this game, I think, really is speaking to me, and why the other games in the series have also spoke to me. Like I said, I mentioned I played the Shin Megami Tensei 3 as well as Persona 3, and then I have played a little bit of the ways through Metaphor ReFantazio. I keep getting distracted. One of the things that was distracting me was playing with these handhelds and things like that, and that really sort of cut down on my actual game time. So that's being rectified as we speak. And then, you know, now played through this one, Part 4. There is a sequel as well, which I played probably about an hour of just yesterday, just kind of check it out. It's Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. I will say it's a little confusing how it fits in. It kind of fits in like before this game ends, and there's like multiple endings. So I think the ending that it looks like it's heading toward, and that is not the one I did in this game. So just keep that in mind. There is multiple ways to end the game. And that one is kind of a sort of a nice upgrade. There's a little bit more quality of life things in number 4/Apocalypse. But it's not, I think this is still, it's not a big deal, because if you have the speed boost and the quick save and stuff like that, any sort of jankiness of it being, a 15-year-old game or whatever, goes away pretty quickly there. And as we speak, I've also started number 5 on my Switch, or Switch 2, and because a buddy of mine was really interested, I was telling him about this one, and he's like, well, I'm just going to get the new one for my Steam Deck. So I was like, well, I'll get it on my Switch too. And that one's been a lot of fun too, a little different there. The reason I'm bringing this up is because this one fits, not just this game, but the Shin Megami Tensei games themselves, apart from Persona and Metaphor ReFantazio, and even, like I mentioned before, Monster Hunter. There's something very deck buildy about it, very card crafty. Because in Persona, it's more like, and even Metaphor ReFantazio, it's like these personality upgrades, if you will, or just sort of introspection, and these sort of different archetypes in the case of Metaphor ReFantazio, where it's very personal and internal, and sort of like you're upgrading yourself all the time, and then some of the other characters that come with you. Whereas the characters in this case that are in your party, these demons, are very disposable, because like I showed you can fuse them. The 2 demons that you had are gone, and now you have a new one is sort of an amalgamation of those. And so if you think about that kind of daisy chain down the line, you can kind of work to have a good sort of variety of demons that will kind of last you a little while, but then over time you're going to have to kind of get rid of them, upgrade them to get the better stats or the better sort of loadouts of abilities that are going to be more helpful to you. And that's a lot like, not only is it deck building, because you can go and recruit new demons and speak to them and sort of trick them into joining you, but you can also card craft. There's games like Mystic Vale and some of the other card crafting games from John D. Clare, who's a board game designer who just done a bunch of games for AEG and others, where you have these cards and sleeves that you can sort of slide other sort of filters or layouts on top of, and they'll kind of alter the card. So the way that the demons kind of work here as they get upgraded and fused is like a way of card crafting, and then just recruiting the games is like the deck building mechanic. And one thing that's neat about this, and I think I like this the best even out of 5 and 3, is when you level up the demon and they get like a new skill, then at that point you have the opportunity to add that to your main character. So they become almost like a really like strict reserve, because you can always have like a mess of demons in your pool, although you can never have duplicates of the same one, but you can have a mess of them in there. But you're like, I'm always going to want to have somebody, this is how I ran the game, of like with these main elements. I always want these main elements in play, because if I run into an encounter that hits me up and I don't have the right element to trigger the weaknesses so I can get a couple extra turns, I'm going to get wiped out in the encounter. Because the game is not, I wouldn't say it's overly difficult, but it's moderately more difficult than most JRPGs. So it's good to have everything at your disposal. So that interesting sort of way to sort of have the demons in effect teach your main character certain abilities, and you're like, this is just a great ability I'm going to want 90% of the time, and then you can sort of siphon that off. And then because as you like I said, go through the game, you're going to be losing demons, you're going to be fusing them and all these kinds of things, and so you're like, I got to make sure I have this around. I don't want to accidentally fuse away this cool ability and then have to go find recruit another one and things like that. And just one last kind of like mechanical board gamey type of thing before I talk about the theme and stuff like that, and kind of give you a general review of it, is the whole press turn thing, where those weaknesses come into play. So if it's weak to fire, I hit it with fire, it does a little extra damage, and then I get sort of like a point or a half point of action turn. So I get like extra turns, extra actions. And so that sounds like, oh, okay, well, why wouldn't you just always, get the elemental weakness and do that? Well, because depending on the strength of the monster, the encounter, or how sort of out-leveled you are, or just how crafty the monster is, that you might do some decent damage, but eventually they're going to get a turn and just kick you right in the face, and they're going to do their own sort of weakness advantage type of thing. So you have to take that in mind. And then you also have to think a little bit defensively about like having healing, having like buffs and protective things, or just out like preventative spells that prevent certain types of damage, things like that. So you've got to juggle all of that in there, and then think about all of that, like especially for boss fights over the course of maybe like multiple stages. Sometimes bosses will like mutate, and so their weaknesses will change, stuff like that, or they'll do some other kind of triggered event or something that you have to think about. And so that's where the really fun like puzzle action economy, really fun, just boss fight comes into play. That's so prevalent in a lot of RPGs and in a lot of like board game RPG types of settings as well, where you've got to really, it's very like methodical and thinky, and you're gonna a lot of trial and error and things like that. But the thing that I really like about this, and I'll compare it to another game that I just recently finished called Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which I really enjoyed. But if you really pin me down and ask me which combat I liked better, a Shin Megami Tensei combat or the Clair Obscur, I would give the nod to the Shin Megami series. Only slightly, but I feel like the action point, the strength and weakness stuff and all of that is just much more fleshed out, whereas in Expedition 33 it's prevalent and it's impactful and it's meaningful, but it kind of gets overshadowed by the dodge mechanic which, just as a quick aside, I played through that game on normal all the way until the final boss and then I switched it to easy because there's a moment, this is not a spoiler really, where the friggin' thing flies around for like 2 minutes and then you have to parry it or dodge like 15 times in a row. And I was like, I'm not doing that again. And then you've got to like reload the cutscene and reload the thing. You can skip the cutscene, but it still like loads. You have like loading times. And I was like, yeah, I really liked the story in that game. So I was like way more interested in seeing how the story finished out than fighting the boss legitimately. And I thought about going back and fighting it on normal because I was like, well, basically I should have leveled up a little more. And that way when I got hit, it wouldn't do so much damage. But I was like, whatever. But to me, the point of that, sort of the contrast that I'm trying to drive is not to beat up on Expedition 33 because I really had a great time with that game, is that when I come back so I lose to a boss in this game, and then I'm like, okay, I know I did something wrong here. I know if I could sort of reset, go back to a save, swap in a different demon, load out a different thing, then that, if I can get that squeeze that extra turn out of them, or squeeze that little like buff, or I can make it through like an onslaught of damage from the boss. I know if I can get through that with all of my creatures intact, then they can all trigger their abilities, because if this one gets wiped out, that just cooks me for the whole combat. So it's like a lot of trial and error there, but it feels like very intellectually sort of satisfying, makes you feel clever. We're like, oh, okay, if I did this and then swap these out, and then you get it. And then there's just some really, really great encounters and boss combats, especially in like the back. Well, I would say this one's interesting. So I'll get to this now, is the difficulty of the game, because I think this one is very strange because it has a lot of front-loaded difficulty, because you can sort of have monsters sneak up on you where you don't get the drop on them to be able to hit them and then get your initiative. And then if you're in a bad spot and that happens to you, it will just wipe your party. The nice thing is, I showed you the quick save, which is great on the Thor, but the game effectively has a quick save because you can just save anywhere. So it's not a big deal if you get wiped out. But that's not a usual thing in a JRPG where you can just get wiped out, at least not as much in this game. This seems to happen a lot more in Shin Megami Tensei 4 than in other games, or in all the Shin Megami games. That happened to me in 5, and I've just started playing that, and it happened to me a bunch in 3. But back to my point about difficulty is like, that's the cool thing about this, is like it's very front loaded, so you've got to really kind of know what's going on, and then you kind of like, you'll get good at the game and you'll get a good party that will like last you a while, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I'm mowing through everything. And there's a little bit of backtracking where you go through and like, you've sort of over leveled those areas that you're going back through, so you can kind of grind through that very quickly and get to where you need to go. And then so there's kind of a middle phase where it just isn't as difficult, but then it starts to ramp back up again as you start to get harder bosses and things like that, and in different groups. And by the end, for me, most of the sort of the regular encounters were pretty easy. It gives you some auto battle options and things like that. And you can kind of upgrade your auto battle, which is cool with the app. So it'll be smarter about how it auto battles and finds weaknesses for you and things like that. Because it's like, I got it. I know how the game works. And I like when a game does it. It's like, okay, you figured it out. Here you go. So you don't have to like be repetitive about it. So it gives you that. And then it kind of picks back up in difficulty. And then, you know, some good final bosses and things. And the last sort of point I want to leave with this is I've kind of reviewed it with that last point in terms of the combat, comparing it to Clair Obscur and things like that. The theme of it is pretty interesting to me. I really like this, and I'm kind of thinking of it in a way. If somebody were to make this into a board game, like make a Shin Megami Tensei board game, it doesn't matter if it was 3, 4, or 5, because they're all kind of very similar, where the world is destroyed. You sort of randomly or by choice or someone else picked you out of a lineup, whatever, like you are given sort of a task, and if you can make it through this sort of arduous, sort of long, epic journey through like a destroyed Tokyo and surrounding area, then you might be able to kind of pick a side, if you will, between like order and chaos, or it kind of varies depending on the game. I can't remember what the names are. There's a weird name in here, and then like Lucifer is the other one. But it's usually like an order and chaos, and there's like different factions of demons. In this case, there's different factions of humans that are still around in 4, which is very interesting. So there's actually a direct, I don't know if it's a sequel, but it's sort of like a parallel story with Apocalypse. And I don't know how interesting that is to other people. Now, for me personally, I sort of like how it's a jacked up Book of Revelation sort of thing, because I just have a huge issue with like the obsession with that book in general, and the like overall, like I know I'm gonna piss people off with this, but the overall like anchor that it has had on civilization for the last 2,000 years. So I'm like, if you can just throw that thing in the fire, I think the world would be a better place. And so I like how this does, it just messes with it, and it's totally like not agendaed or anything. It's just messy and sloppy and humorous and just all kind of jacked up, and it's very you know, there's a certain take on it. I think culturally, probably stuff I don't even understand, honestly, but it just from an outsider, it kind of feels like that. So I really like appreciate that. But I can see also, because there's people I know that are good people on that side of the fence, that it might piss them off and it might not be palatable to them. So I get that. It probably wouldn't be a great thing, but I think if you had the IP and the trademarks of like an official Shin Megami Tensei thing, then you know, you might sell enough that who cares what other people think. You know, but I think that would be kind of cool as a board game, because if you think of it like a Mage Knight game, which has deck building and things, and then you had this thing where you could kind of like get new demons in your deck and like card craft them up, and you move around like kind of a hex map or something, because it's always like, you know, there's always like an overworld area, and you're moving your little pawn around, you're going from place to place, and it's a little different in 3, 4, and 5. I will say with this one in 4, probably my least favorite part of the game is the map movement, because it's very like janky and broken up. So it's like almost like it's in zones, but it's super like annoying, because you'll like get on a road and then it'll be like, oh, I can't go there, I have to like double back and go around. So it's like super confusing. And there was one thing I had to look up in this game, and I hate looking stuff up, but I had to look it up because it's at one point in the game it says, hey, go to this place, because you go to places like Shibuya, Shibunki, I can't pronounce some of the names, like East Tokyo, West Tokyo, and there's like they're real regions of Tokyo. And there was one that named it, and I was like, I don't know where that is. Nobody's ever mentioned this before. Like, and I've been all over this map like 50 times doing other things, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So I looked around a little bit, and I just said, screw it. And I went and looked online and was like, oh. I was like, okay, that's not really where a normal entrance is, because you can see on the map where different entrances are. I was like, okay, I would have found it by brute force in a year, you know. I was like, thank God I looked that up. So that thing is a little weird with this. But I found it a little bit better in 3 and definitely in 5. 5 is like much more modern. But back to my point about like board games, you could have like a cool hex map with zones of Tokyo or wasted Tokyo or whatever you want to call it, and you know, move around and recruit demons and do these kinds of things. I think that would be a really fun thing. I think it lends itself to board gaming. And in this one, you've got other companions that come from your your initial kingdom, which I don't want to spoil. It's really interesting how it works with the kingdom of Mikado and Tokyo and all that. That's the thing I really like about this better than the other one so far. I haven't finished 5 yet, but I was like, oh, that's kind of a weird whole thing with like the firmament. If you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about. But there's the firmament, and then there's Mikado, and there's Tokyo, and there's other things. Like, that's just a neat little world that they built there with that. But in the case of this game, you could have a party of people, so you could have a co-op game with the different samurai and stuff, quote unquote samurai, and journey around and try to get to the end and kind of choose the faction that you want to win and stuff. I think this one out of 3, 4, and 5 is really meant to have like a co-op aspect. And even on the 3DS, it had a Street Pass thing, and that's not enabled here. And I frankly don't know exactly what it does, but I think there was a way you could like trade demons and stuff with the Street Pass, which was like an old 3DS thing. So if you were sitting on the train or the bus or whatever at school or wherever you were at, and you could trade like Pokemon or something. So that would be really cool. I think that would be a neat thing. I just don't know how good the theme would sell. It's because it's kind of a niche even in the video game world. Less so, I think, than it used to be. And I think the whole demon thing and all the biblical implications and stuff like that might irritate people, but it doesn't irritate me. But they had to have done other games, like I mentioned earlier, the Persona game and the Metaphor game, which I think is in a way more interesting thematically, although I like the mechanics of this more, where you have these sort of aspects of your personalities and your archetypes, and you're sort of developing those things, and so you're getting access to some of the same sort of elemental weaknesses and buffs and debuffs and all that through your own sort of thing and through everybody in your party's things. Although the fusing part's there, but you're only fusing the stuff for yourself in this case, where you're kind of fusing your party in the Shin Megami games, which I like better. But there are also other sort of spin-offs in the series. I had to look it up. I forgot the name. There's the Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga. There's a 2-parter there, which I played around with like a year ago, and I was like, this looks really cool, but I'm going to leave it and come back to it. And then there's some other Digital Devil survivors. So they're very have a technology thing where they're always using like a little handheld device or a phone, or there's some other technology in there that's doing the summoning of these demons or these other principalities or whatever. And so you could do like sort of a technological sort of angle there, which would be more palatable to people. Yeah, so there's that aspect of it. Oh, or the other thing I was thinking of, you could do, and I'd be curious to see if they ever did this with a video game, where they kind of took the whole spirit and personality and demon stuff out of it, but they made it kind of a biological thing. So you think of like different aliens and crossbreeding creatures and stuff like that. I don't know. That seems less interesting to me, but they could probably do it way better than I can imagine it. And that could be an interesting kind of like riff on it, Shin Megami Alien or something like that. Anyway, so hopefully, I know this one is like not really available. You'd have to go, hunt down a 3DS, or pick up one of these devices here, or you can play it on your PC like I've been showing. But there's also number 5, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance is like the newest version of that, which right now I'm having a lot of fun with. And it has a lot of the elements. It's a whole kind of different sort of game in some ways, but there's still a ton of commonalities and stuff like that. Or the Persona games, Metaphor Fantasio is another one from the same company. And if you're like a board gamer and you like deck building, card crafting type of stuff, this I think is going to be pretty interesting. It's all turn-based. There's no dexterity or, you don't have to be super ambidextrous or good with your thumbs and that kind of stuff. You can take your time with it, but it's super rewarding. And all the games are very meaty. This one took me about 50 hours to get through, and the number 3 took me a little less than 50 hours. And so it's a good like bang for your buck. And I never felt like these overstayed their welcome. Really, sometimes I do. I think for me, once you get around 40, like, that's good, like you should be done. Persona 3 was 80 hours for me, and I can't say it really overstayed its welcome. It kind of did, though. It's a little long. I didn't not have fun at all, but it's still, that's too much time. 40, 50, that's a good, you know, you still feel like you got a big, you know, you got a full course meal. You didn't overeat too much. So anyway, that's a look at that. Thanks.